state of Maine locked in battle with the Trump administration over school gender policies, as well as transgender athletes competing in women's sports. Nicole Neily, founder and president of Parents Defending Education, will join us next.
What is a woman, and why is it important that we understand the difference between men and women?
Well, it's sort of easy to answer for me, because a woman is somebody that can have a baby under certain circumstances, and a woman's a person that in many cases has been treated very badly, because I think that what happens with this crazy issue of men being able to play in women's sports is just ridiculous.
The Department of Health and Human Services referring the state of Maine to the Justice Department for not complying with Title IX and bucking President Trump's executive order banning biological boys from playing in girls' sports. CB Cotton has got the story. She's in our New York newsroom. How much time does Maine have to change its policy, CB?
Hi, John. Well, the state of Maine was given more than a week to decide whether it would comply with Title IX, and leaders there, they chose not to. Now, the Department of Health and Human Services says those who oversee school sports in the state have been referred to the DOJ for, quote, enforcement in court for continuing to unlawfully allow males to compete against females. Maine was first thrust into the national spotlight after a transgender student who competed as a boy last year won a state title in girls pole vaulting in February of this year. President Donald Trump and Maine's Governor Janet Mills later argued at the White House when the president threatened to withhold federal funds if the state did not comply. But Maine leaders argue Title IX violates their own state law, which allows students to compete based on their gender identity. Maine high school athlete Cassidy Carlisle says she lost to a transgender student in Nordic skiing. She says she's heartbroken and watching opportunities get taken away.
Not only is it our government saying, I'm not going to fight for you, within our state, obviously, but it's a female. It's our own kind. It's our own people, saying, I am not going to fight for you.
Yeah, so it's unclear the next steps the DOJ will take. We've reached out to the governor and Department of Education in Maine multiple times, but have yet to hear back. John.
All right, CB Cotton setting up the issue for us. CB, thank you. Sandra?
All right, let's bring in Nicole Neily, Parents Defending Education founder and president. Something people are taking a lot of interest in, and Maine is certainly at the center of it. Please do share your thoughts.
It's interesting that this is the hill that Maine has chosen to die on. You look at polling, the American Parent Coalition released polling recently showing that this is a deeply unpopular issue for Democrats, even in a deep blue state like Maine. And so, although it's not an election year in Maine, I do think that there are going to be repercussions for this. And the fact that officials there continue to double down and say, we will not stand with women, we will not stand with girls, as we watch videos over and over again of women being denied their place in the podium, of girls saying, I'm uncomfortable, I feel unsafe in locker rooms. This is an issue that has really captivated Americans' heart and minds from coast to coast, and I think it's not the end we're going to see of this.
There's another big issue going on in Maine, and that is the fact that in schools, they're creating programs where kids can express their gender identity and be dealt with in the gender of their choice, while parents are not informed about what's going on in the school. And you and the Education Secretary, Linda McMahon, did a video about it. Let's play some of that here.
We have heard disturbing reports that dozens of Maine school districts allow for schools to create gender plans that support a student's transgender identity and then hide those plans from parents, claiming they don't fall under education records. That is unacceptable and unlawful, if true.
So the way, according to the Education Secretary, these schools are attempting to get away with it is by saying, oh, gender identity is not part of their academic record, so we don't need to share this with parents. But this isn't happening just in the state of Maine. We did a similar story last week in California.
Yes, frighteningly, my organization has been tracking what we call parental exclusion policies. We've identified 1,200 districts and counting from coast to coast, impacting more than 12 million students and counting. These are school board officials that have affirmatively passed a policy saying you as a parent do not have a right to know your child's gender identity at school. We sued a district in Iowa a few years ago about this. They were putting those files into temporary, into children's temporary files, so that even if you pulled your child, even if you asked for your child's records, you would never have access to it. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
Why do you fathom, Nicole, that they feel like they can gain momentum with this? I mean, what parent feels like they shouldn't have the absolute discretion in their child's life and have the absolute authority in it?
The argument that we hear is that parents are unsafe. Parents won't be supportive, and which is something that is really, frightening and insulting. Because if a school official believes that a child is in an unsafe environment, they're mandatory reporters in all 50 states. They are required to report that to Child Protective Services. And so for a math teacher to say, you know what, I think mommy's a Christian, I think she's a conservative, I don't think she'll love her child, is throwing up a wall between a parent and child that is, once that's damaged, can never be repaired. It's terrifying. I
want to come back to this issue of transgender athletes in girls' sports, because there was this episode in Oregon that we want to play. This is a 400-meter sprint where a biological male beat the next best girl by 7 seconds in a 400-meter. He got 57.62 seconds. That's 8 seconds off the best Oregon high school male athlete, and yet he beat the girls by, the transgender athlete beat the girls by 7 seconds. And the same thing is going on in Maine. And Janet Mills, the governor, is very defiant of President Trump's challenges to her. And one of the big questions that I have is, when it comes to transgender athletes in sports, why are women so quick and so willing to want to erase women in women's sports? I think big picture, we're told be nice, keep your mouth shut, go along to get along. But we just saw today the WNBA put out a strong statement in support of Transgender Visibility Day. That is the women's basketball league. And so, we're watching people who are rolling over because they think that, maybe they won't be attacked at the end. It's frightening, it's disappointing, and that's why I'm so glad that there are people like Riley Gaines who have spoken out and said, how dare you over my dead body? Yeah, it can be frightening. It can be downright dangerous in some of these sports as well. Appreciate you joining us, Nicole. Thank you. Thanks, Nicole.